Welcome back to Art with Marsha. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. Would you believe it if I told you that AI helped me to create an ultimate palette? It's true, and I think I did a very good job. We spent weeks working with ChatGPT, putting in prompts, looking up ideas to get the very best from all the name brands. We've taken a look at the details of each color, not just each brand. And so now I'm excited to share with you what we found in that AI search and what my ultimate palette looks like. We looked at all professional level paints from Daniel Smith, Winsor Newton, Core, Holbein, Schmal, and many other professional manufacturers. We did analysis to choose the very best ones. And after all of this, we've come down to a beautiful palette that I call my ultimate palette. It had to support me doing multiple things. And let me show you what we came up with. So why did I ask AI to help me create my ultimate palette? As a beginner, I'm not familiar with all of the professional watercolors. I'm not familiar with all of the different colors available out there. And I'm not real sure which colors mix with which other colors. This way, I was able to have AI help me understand different choices, what impacts they would have, what are the most important watercolors based on what I like to paint. And so doing that, I thought it would be great to share with you the process and design to see if you'd like to create your own watercolor palette with the assistance of AI. So let's get started in the journey. I started out with the challenge and why I reached out to AI for assistance. A couple weekends ago, I decided to swatch out a lot of my watercolor colors. I was putting them into the swatch decks. What I found was that I had 7 different burnt siennas from different manufacturers. And it seemed like a waste of money to have that many duplicates. But because I'm a beginner, I didn't know who the best manufacturer was. So I kept buying introductory sets to different watercolor companies. And that was just getting too difficult. Even then, the sum of the colors, especially like Hooker's green, was very different between the different manufacturers. So if I wanted to be able to create consistent paintings and learn to really use my palette, it was important to have similar colors, similar manufacturing styles. There's a big difference between like M. Graham that uses a honey base versus Core that has a unique formulation instead of the gum arabic. So it was important that I used AI to fill in the gaps of my knowledge. Also, paints are expensive, especially professional color level paints. Fortunately, they do last a while, but I was just mixing from different places, different companies. So this is going to save me money in the long run. As I use up a certain color, I know specifically which tube I need to go purchase. That also makes it easier on my budget that I'm only buying 1 tube at a time instead of buying 6 to 12 different pans. And having them all in different cases was also difficult. So when I did have the pan palettes, there would be certain colors that I needed that were in a different palette. And so I wanted a single place to have all of my palette so that I can learn it, so I can memorize where colors are and make it second nature when I want to create a painting. And so I had to build one palette that did everything, regardless of manufacturer, regardless of subject matter. I needed to have one good set of paints. So what were my requirements that I gave to ChatGPT? I told it the subject matter that I like to work with. Number one is painting landscapes. I love water and I love oceans and things like that. So I had to have a lot of different blues in it. Because I'm still a beginner, I'd still paint in the other areas as well. So if I wanted to paint a portrait with a video, I wanted to make sure that I had those colors available, even though I don't know the best colors for portraits today. I wanted them to be able to mix into additional colors. I went through a book that showed how different colors mix together, and I've had fun doing that. It was a challenge where you only use one red, one yellow, and one blue to come up with 32 different shades and colors and values. And that course was really helpful. I wanted to make sure that this palette had the right warms, the right cools, the right choices so that I could still mix a lot of unique colors. I also wanted it to be artist grade only. If I'm going to spend this much money on a paint, I want to make sure that it's going to perform consistently. And with the student grade paints, I found that they were varied significantly based on the level of pigment in them or the chalkiness that was left over. So I made the decision to go ahead and do this all based on professional paints. And that's going to help me with that consistency from one to the other. So why did I choose ChatGPT? It seems like I could have just gone to YouTube and did research. I could have gone to my classes and asked the instructors. But I wanted a more actual choice, not just preferences. I want something more technical and verified on when I choose what I put in the palette. So one of the things is pigments. Now, it was important to have good mixing colors with only single pigments. And if there's multiple pigment paints, then those are probably better in my extra 24 wells. A couple exceptions to that were the Misty Morning by Roman Szmal. I could not find another color similar to that or being able to mix that from my palette. So that's one of the convenience colors that I did include in my base palette. But I also needed to know their transparency, how they granulate, their lightfastness. So even something as simple as the manufacturer's strengths, because Daniel Smith has the Prime Tech series, which are very unique, raw pigments. I love those. They granulate really, really well. But I also want to make sure that I had the quality of core, because those are very vibrant, very nice for doing things like coral. They also have a really good staining so that if I do need to lift to get a lighter value, I can do that consistently with their color. So it was important to get all of this information, but I didn't have time to go to each manufacturer's website to look up the information. So instead, I asked ChatGPT a question. I asked it how you would build a professional palette for watercolor using the consistencies that I asked for, using different questions that I asked ChatGPT. It was really interesting to see how it did the research. It compared the different colors together, and it gave me the insights across hundreds of paints at a professional level. So as we kept doing it, I told it how many I wanted. It gave me the order based on warm and cools. And so this was really, really fun to do. And we did the research across all the major brands of professional colors. So it looked at Daniel Smith's website. It looked at Roman Szmal's website, Maimeri Blu, Winsor Newton. It even went through some of the stores like Dick Blick. They have their own professional line. ChatGPT was able to go through and do all of this research for me. I didn't have to. The thing that was great is I could take the outputs from ChatGPT and the research and put it into my own file so that I could keep track of the different colors I have. If I ever had a question on which one was the most staining green, if I had to look up and say, which color is the warmest color in the group. So that was a lot of research that ChatGPT did for me. I was able to bring a lot of this into Excel. ChatGPT also gave me the definitions of things. For example, the lightfastness, the temperature of them. And like I said, it brought it down from all the different manufacturers. It even captured the pigment colors, the number of the pigments. It told me how many pigments were within a brand's manufacturer's site. It told me the light fastness ratings. It was able to tell me if it's cool or warm. And again, the names of the actual pigments. So I was able to put that into my current inventory spreadsheet. This was a list that I started long ago to choose what colors I have in my inventory and which ones I do not. It started getting away from me as a beginner because I kept buying other colors that I liked or that were required for a certain class. So I now have a complete inventory of all of my colors along with the attributes of those colors. I highlighted the ones in purple that ChatGPT selected as part of my palette. So now I could get to building it. So we looked at what gel mixes the best, which green is most natural, which earth colors are essential for building beaches and oceans. Because with me only using 24 or 48 of the colors, it was important. You can imagine Daniel Smith has over 200 and Winsor Newton has over 200 different colors of paints. So it was important to select the ones that had to be in my base palette. And so I ended up with a set of 6 yellows, 7 reds, 8 blues, 7 earth colors, 5 oranges, 5 violets, 6 greens, and 4 neutrals. And again, this was a lot based on the types of things that I paint. The actual Mihello palette I purchased off of Amazon because it was very unique. It had large wells that are slightly slanted, so it allows me to select the colors easily. It also had that secondary tray, and that's where we get into the 48 versus the 72. Because I needed to fill up the bottom paint tray with those with those single pigment colors, the ones that were good for better mixing. And then I had the extra palette that's a double decker to actually put in those convenience colors. And so this is what the palette actually looks like. Now, again, why only 48? There's cleaner organization. I'll get better mixing results between these selected areas, and I'll have less duplication in colors. So I don't want, 100 different colors to choose from. It's going to help me actually paint faster because I don't have to dig into one palette to get this color or say, oh, you know what? I like this other green in that palette. And so I end up with 3 or 4 different palettes on my desk at a time. And it was just too many different things for me to keep track of. This double-decker palette let me solve for all of my issues by giving me these 48 core colors and then 24 extra convenience colors. And so what are these other 24 wells really going to be? Let me give you a little bit more of a description. The number one thing is metallics. I love using mica paints and metallic colors that really pop off the page. It really helps with breaking up a lot of the ocean scenes around coral, things like that. There's also some single pigment paints, like I mentioned before, with Daniel Smith's Prime Tech line. I really love those colors. I really love the way that they granulate. So I wanted to be able to have that. So I do take a lot of classes and courses. So sometimes they have a specific color that they want to have in the palette. So I do have some of those that I add in to these extra 24 wells. And what's nice is I can put just a dot or two of the paint in it. And then when I'm done, I can move that paint to an actual half pan to put into storage. So I'm not wasting any colors, even if they're not my primary. And another thing that ChatGPT was good for is giving me a palette layout. So I understood that there's different color temperatures between the warm and the cools and things like that, but I didn't know for sure where everything fit. Some of the colors I've never seen before, so it would have been very difficult for me to put things into the palette and then have another color that I needed to add in between. So ChatGPT was able to put things together in a more harmonized way for mixing, putting the color families together, and really building out an easier way to use for workflow. So I think that using ChatGPT would be good for many of you, even if you just loaded it with the colors that you already have and say, build me a palette out of these existing colors. It doesn't have to be all new colors. And you'll see in a moment, a lot of the colors I already had, but some I didn't. But having a thoughtful layout in your palette actually helps you to paint faster and easier without strange accidents from mixing the wrong colors together. And here's what you've all been waiting for. This is the Ultimate 48 palette that ChatGPT designed for me. It lists all the different colors. It mentions the manufacturers. It also creates a scale based on the light fastness, the transparency, the granulation. This only took a couple hours of using ChatGPT, where it would have taken me days or weeks to come up with all of these colors on my own. You can see how vibrant it is as well. So let's talk a little bit more detail. First of all, I had to label everything. This took a long time, and it was a bit of a challenge. It was important that I chose my micron pens, my micron fine liners, to be able to label the wells themselves. Using a Sharpie, it does wash off with the amount of water that we use in our paints. So when you go to label it, obviously use that. I like having the individual wells labeled so that I don't have to look up at my swatching sheet to pick a specific color. And by using this more consistently, I'm going to learn, where everything is within the palette. Here's the empty palette. You can see all of the 48 wells at the bottom. And then this is the 24 extra colors that I'm going to be able to use as my convenience colors. I like that it's separate, and it also fits in the top part of the tray. So this is what ChatGPT did for me, is by choosing the layout, it knew how many wells were in each row and how many rows there were. And so now I can load it up with all of my paints. After I labeled them with the micron fine liner, you can see here, I was able to do it right within the top of the well itself. So I can look at it and see each of my colors easily. And so you all got a preview of some of the paints I owned. I was too excited to start filling up the palette. So I'll talk to you a little bit in a second about the actual process of filling. But I already owned a lot of those paints. I was able to go through my current inventory and organize them a little bit into which paints fit in the palette, which ones not. They may have different manufacturers. For instance, the ChatGPT said that it should be a Daniel Smith, but I only had Winsor Newton. I'm not going to waste paint, so I use that to fill up the well as well. Does anybody else have a problem with purchasing paints at random? I think I have a challenge. These are all of my tubes of paint that I already had before filling the palette. I think I have an addiction. So after I found all those paints within that pile, I had to do an art haul. Oh darn, I had to buy new paints. This was the fun part because I found new manufacturers. I found some existing manufacturers that had different colors that I really loved. Some challenges too came up because Roman Szmal's Aquarius selections I had to order from England. I could not find them here in the US. The majority of paints I did purchase from Dick Blick. I love using Dick Blick as a store. I can also typically get some of their items through Michael's website. And that way I get some of the specials that Michaels has for saving up reward dollars. So it's kind of a win-win. But Dick Blick will send it to you quite quickly. And I really like that as well, because I was excited for my new palette. Here is the little mini haul that I had. These are from Dick Blick. And what I like is they reuse their paint boxes to send them to you. That way the paint tubes don't get crushed in transit. They're also really good about if there's specials going on. So when I ordered this haul, there was a special with Winsor Newton being able to send in a postcard to become part of their wall. It's a virtual online grouping of a bunch of different artists, and it's free to send it in. And I thought that was really nice that they provided that for me instead of having to go to the Winsor Newton site. So again, just a few little colors here and there. Now you can see these are all the colors I had to purchase. You can see there's a Schmincke, there's Holbein, and primarily Daniel Smith, and there is one Winsor Newton. So out of 48 colors, I actually only ended up ordering about a dozen colors, and that filled up enough paints for my palette. And so what comes next? I'm going to actually take you through filling all of my ultimate palette through a series of episodes. There's going to be 8 episodes in total. Each one has about 6 colors in it that fit into the palette. I'll show you my swatching of them, the filling of them, and we'll also talk about what's good in them. So what are you going to learn when we actually go through these 8 videos, and why do you care about watching me fill a palette? But in addition to filling the palette, I'm going to be swatching each color so you can see what that variation is between them. We'll see how transparent they are. We're definitely going to look at their granulation because that's my favorite part. We'll talk about the best subjects to paint with those and where I've started using them in my own professional work. So it's going to be a little bit of tips, tricks. Each episode should only be about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the color series. And that way you'll be able to get a much more in-depth about each of the color series. Each one will be a separate episode. Like you saw, there's 8 of them. And that way you can focus, for instance, maybe you're only focused on blues because you like to paint water like I do. Or you might want to see the yellows because of springtime and summertime using those brighter colors. But what I want you to know is that you want to choose your paints intentionally. Don't just choose whatever an instructor has told you, because this isn't about owning every paint. It's about choosing intentionally, making sure our money is used where we need it to be. And so I want to ask you, if you could keep just one watercolor, what color would it be in your palette? Which one's your favorite and why? I put that down in the comments below so that we can track. And as I come up to those colors, I'll bring up some of those comments from the group as well. As always, I hope you're subscribed already. Like this video, and you can put in your notifications to be notified when I launch those courses. Thank you for your time today and joining me on my path with my ultimate AI palette. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.